If you guys have been around my channel for the last 4 years, you'll know there's rare occasions where I have to cover something that's just not something I want to talk about because it's so weird, or it's so disgusting, or it's just so bad that me personally, I don't even want to talk about stories like this. But I feel it's important to do so because without talking about it, there's a certain sector of my audience and probably the audience online that doesn't get a full picture of their favorite athletes or their favorite sport. And in this case, once again, we are here because of Jon Jones. Why, you may ask? No, not because of the Tom Aspinall saga drama that keeps going on. He's ducking, the UFC won't strip him. We know this. Chapter infinity. We get it. No, this time it's because of things that Jon is doing outside of the cage, or has done outside of the cage. And you can chalk this one up on the latest instances of what the f is wrong with Jon Jones, but this is not the time he hit another car that had a pregnant lady in it in an intersection and then fled the scene. This isn't the time where he put his hands on his own wife. This isn't the time where he threatened officers and rammed his own head into his car after driving drunk away from a scene. No, this wasn't one of the other times where he was driving drunk and got stopped. It wasn't one of the times where he purposely hid from a drug testing body for 8 hours under a practice MMA mat so that he wouldn't be caught. No, this wasn't one of the times where he screwed over the UFC and had them reschedule a card after testing hot, or cancel a card after testing hot, or remove a card from a Vegas location to a California location because he tested hot. No, it's not any of those things this time. It's just, again, another instance of looking at probably the greatest MMA athlete of all and saying, you are a horrible representation for this sport. And this isn't a mistake. This is just Jon Jones being a scumbag, a douche, and quite frankly, to say it bluntly, we're in Pride Month, and Jon Jones has a story out that's at the least a very crude and homophobic joke that says more about Jon than it says about anybody else. And at the very worst is sexual assault on an individual that was trying to help him. I've described this in the best way I can, but let's take a listen to see what the f I'm talking about. Jon Jones, as reported by Big John McCarthy, at one point in his career, essentially sexually harassed an individual right before one of his fights just because he could. And it's so f***ing weird and creepy and gross, and honestly sounds exactly like something Jon Jones would do. Let's take a listen.
But when I went into Jon's locker room, he's bouncing around, he's having a good time, and he said, "I got a question for you. I said, "Yeah, what's your question?" And he says, I need somebody. And there's an individual there, and that individual was a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and was working for the commission. And he says, is someone getting on the ground for me, right? And so this guy, being a ground guy and being someone that was, man, I'm in Jon Jones's locker room. This is great. And so he says, oh, I'll do it for you. He says, I know how to roll. And so he goes down. He says, just put me in guard, right? And then Jon decides to do a sexual act with him, saying, what if I do this, right? This isn't illegal, right? And the guy who was on the ground, quickly his eyes went, as big as they could get. Like, what are you doing? And I said, Jon, knock it off, right? And I helped the person up, and he goes, I'm just joking. And he goes, but really, what could you do? I said, I could disqualify you for being unsportsmanlike. Go ahead and do it. Let's see what happens.
Are we serious? If it was anybody else, you'd think, okay, that's an over-the-line joke and very out of character for literally anybody else to do in the UFC. Legitimately anybody else. Legitimately name another fighter that you would see doing that. How about the other guy that's trying to help Jon Jones, a part of the commission that's there to help Jon not only understand the rules, but also prepare him for any new rule changes or anything like that. Jon just taking advantage of the situation. Hey, let me play a practical joke by dry humping this guy on the ground, by simulating sex, by grabbing him and thrusting into him. Sorry, I'm using language because that's what the guy did. He's a weirdo and a terrible representation of the sport. But that guy, fan of Jon Jones, black belt, it's like, holy shit, I get to demonstrate with Jon so that he has no more questions about the fight he's going to go into. Jon didn't give a Again, one of the things about Jon Jones is no matter how much of a scumbag, terrible person he is one of, if not the best fighter on the planet. Couldn't give a about none of that. Didn't have any questions or anything like that. Man knew he was probably going to go in there and dominate, but instead, he's got to take some time out of this guy's day and horrify and traumatize him and get his rocks off, I guess, by dry humping the dude. And what's so embarrassing and sad about this is not even one of the worst things Jon Jones has ever done. And listen, I've been in locker rooms. I've been in college locker rooms where dudes play practical jokes on each other. And I've even seen some weirdo scumbags do dumb shit and weird shit that would not fly had some coach or somebody else seen it. And I've known guys being around athletes that have had situations where people have been kicked off teams and out of organizations for doing crude and just absolutely nonsensical, again, harassment bordering on assault, whether it's sexual or not, things to other players on teams. And it never makes any sense. But for Jon to do this right before his fight, in the full view of the commission, in the full view of John McCarthy, and I think part of this clip we didn't get to see was Greg Jackson coming over and apologizing to the guy and to John McCarthy. He's like, hey, sorry, John shouldn't have done that. His own head coach has to come over, like John's father has to go over and apologize for a bad kid at school. He's a grown man acting like this. And again, that guy was a Jon Jones fan that in real time, literally, as John McCarthy said, opened his eyes and saw who this dude really was. It's like every other MMA fan that has wanted to support Jon Jones as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, this sport has seen and maybe will ever see. And yet all of us, just like that guy in that moment, are horrified, traumatized, and embarrassed that we ever looked up to this guy. Part of me wants to just have Jon retire and never hear from him again and have the sport move on. Part of me wants Tom Aspinall to beat the out of him. But that's not because Jon is a good heel character. That's not because Jon is a bad guy. And I got you to hate me with all my trash talk and my mannerisms and cursing out all the fans. No, you're just a bad person, dude. That makes everyone around him uncomfortable. For his pleasure, I've had the same energy for Conor McGregor and the allegations that he's continually come up against. But it's like the greatest of our sports are so bad at representing the sports. Not only just themselves or their families or it's the sport that they represent. And I just wanted to share this because it just burns me out on like even caring about Jon Jones fighting. Because listen, I was excited about Jon and Tom fighting. That was a fun fight to me. Trying to forget all the stuff that Jon has done outside of the cage. And a part of me still, like I said, I want to see Tom whip his ass. But another part of me is just like, bro, just leave so we can be done with this type of shit. Strip him of the belt, move the fuck on, so that we can all just stop thinking about how much of a piece of shit Jon Jones is. I'm done. That's it. Another debaucherous chapter in the Jon Jones book. Again, another instance of him at the very lightest sexually harassing a guy that was trying to help him get ready for a fight. I don't even know what fight it was. It doesn't really matter. And at the worst, sexually assaulting a man in front of a group of licensed commission officials right before he's about to go and fight because he thought it was a joke. Jon Jones is the actual joke. Yeah, that's it. Peace.